Hey, everybody, it's Scott Steen with winnersandwhiners.com coming to you with the Thursday edition of Today in Sports Betting. And, man, we've got a lot to talk about. Baseball is on the way, and we're a third of our way through the preview. Today, we're going to look at the American League Central and the National League Central. And who better to do that with than my little baseball buddy? I know he's excited as all get out about the return of sports. It is, you know who he is. It's Scott Reichel. Hey, Scott, what's up, man?
Nothing much. Looking forward to part two of our three-part baseball coverage. I can't say that these are the most competitive divisions. One of them is. The other one's not necessarily the case, but either or, I'm looking forward to breaking it down.
Yeah, and we had to interrupt our baseball coverage to give terrible golf picks yesterday. So
it's still early. It's still early, man.
They've at least started slowly. I haven't tried. I know a lot of my matchups haven't started yet, so we'll see. You were talking to me before the show and saying that things hadn't gone quite according to plan yet. But
Ricky Fowler remembered how to play golf, so that's not a good sign. But we'll see.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens with all that. In the meantime, man, let's take a look at some baseball here. And we did it yesterday. We might as well start with the National League again. This promises to be. Scott, do you think this is going to be more competitive than the NL East, or just as competitive, or even a little more competitive?
I think it should be more competitive because for the NL East we were talking about yesterday, I really saw about maybe two or three teams. I really wasn't sold on the Nationals. I think the Phillies have a shot. I think the Mets maybe have a shot, but the Braves are clearly the class of the division. It's really not even close.
Right.
The division, it seems like there's really – I'd say 3 to 4 teams that are capable of winning this thing, and I really wouldn't be that surprised. I say 3 to 4 because we'll get into the Brewers, but I'm not exactly as high on them as I am on the other 3 teams we're going to be talking about. But you can really see this division going in a variety of ways.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, we'll get into this, but I think the team that's ranked that has the fourth worst win total is my favorite. So. But we'll start with the favorite. We'll start at the top. St. Louis Cardinals, their win total is 32.5, and the odds that I've found on them over at PointsBet plus 215. Scott, you got anything better than that on the old St. Louis Cardinals?
I see plus 240.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. We talked a little bit about this team last week when we kind of did our our back to baseball preview. I'm not a fan of the pitching. I'm just not sure. I like Jack Flaherty. He's the real deal. But I think you've got a lot of other guys that, while they do have a little bit of name recognition, I'm just not thrilled with Dakota Hudson, Adam Wainwright, Miles Mikolas, and Carlos Martinez. They don't have a set closer. You've got Andrew Miller or Gallegos going to be take on the closer role. And this is the team that's been made the favorite. Scott, you agree with that? You back in the cards here?
For me, no, not to win the division. I respect the fact that they went on a great run post All-Star break last year to win the division. But in reality, you look at this team on paper and say the offense is decent, I'd say. The pitching staff, besides Flaherty, is mediocre. And the bullpen is also pretty average. There's nothing that really jumps off the page besides Flaherty being great. And you have Goldschmidt, who's a phenomenal player, as everybody knows, alongside some other pretty good infielders. You got Colton Wong, Paul DeYoung's pretty good as a shortstop, Tyler O'Neill's a decent outfielder, Dexter Fowler, etc. But really just seems like a decent team. I don't think that they are the most talented team in the division. They might be one of the best coach teams in the division. But then again, I feel like talent is a little bit lacking on this roster.
Yeah, it's a team that you have to remember with so many good teams in this division, they're going to have to bring it. They're going to each and every night that rotation is going to have to go deep, and I'm just not sure that that's something that this team is going to be able to do. Paul Goldschmidt struggled a lot of the year last year. He ended up with decent stats, although he hit just 260. Did end up hitting 34 home runs, knocking in 97. But I think they expected even a little bit more out of Goldie there at first base. Is he on the decline, you think, Scott, or is that Is that just kind of an aberration? Is he going to be back to his 40-plus home runs and 110, 115 RBIs? Yeah, obviously he's not going to do it in a 60-game season.
I would say that even though last year in the regular season his numbers weren't as sharp as they normally were, he was still pretty good in the postseason, and he had some big home runs against the Braves in the first round there. So I still think that he's a trustworthy guy. I think he still has a lot left in the tank, if that's what you mean. I don't think he's going to be duplicating some of the numbers he had earlier in his career because he set the bar pretty high. But I still think that he's got a lot in the tank, and I still think he's a very solid player.
Okay, yeah, and I guess what taking a glance over his records, what really suffered the most was his ability to get on base. His OPS was down. OPS 821 was last year, which was basically about 100 points less than he's done in any of the previous seasons, with the exception of 2016 when it was 899. So yeah, I get fine. I just don't see him, dude. I just don't see him. I don't think they get to 32.5, and I don't think they win the division. I think they may compete for a wild card, although again, the division is very competitive. So if you don't like the Cards, Scott, who do you like? Is it the Cubs? Well, go ahead.
Yeah, we did this preview a couple months ago before the shortened season was announced, and my original pick was the Cubs. However, with the shortened season, I actually don't like the Cubs that much either, simply put. They lost a lot of pieces in free agency. I don't really think they did anything to actually fix any of the new holes that were created during the offseason. They got a brand new manager who's going to have to manage a very unique situation, and I don't really feel confident in David Ross doing that. If you look at the rotation, decent. I mean, Darvish has been hit or miss, and that's putting it lightly. Hendricks is decent. Lester has been pretty good. He was a little bit underwhelming last year. Quintana's decent, and Chatwood's okay as a 5. I mean, that's a pretty decent rotation. The bullpen's a disaster. They lost a lot of pieces from last year. Still got Kimbrel in the 9th, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing at this stage in his career.
I think you do know that.
That's what I'm saying. It's definitely not the same as it used to be. You don't know if last year was a little bit of an anomaly or if that's just who he is now. The lineup, of course, is solid with Contreras, Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, Schwarber, etc. Especially with the DH now, Schwarber's going to be playing every day. But as a whole, this team on paper has the ability to win a decent amount of games because they can score a lot of runs and their pitching staff can maybe piece together something for 60 games. But this bullpen is terrible. So I don't really have faith in them to win the division either.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I'm not a fan of this rotation. There's just too many question marks on this team. Lester was good at home, dreadful on the road. Tyler Chatwood apparently can throw strikes now, although he was so awful, just head and shoulders, the absolute worst pitcher in baseball as far as throwing strikes go. That any kind of improvement would certainly be necessary for him. Although again, he's a 5 starter, but without a lot of off days, they're not going to be able to manipulate the pitching the rotation a lot and skip that 5th guy, I don't think. So, Chatwood in effect ends up playing just as big a role as Hugh Darvish does. And I just 1 through 5, I'm just not a fan of this rotation. They do got some pop, no question about it, in the lineup. Chris Bryan, like I said, Schwarber hitting every day. They brought over Jason Kipnis, play second base. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm not on the Cubs either. I think you and I are both on these last 2 teams that we're going to talk about. And one of those is, of course, the Cincinnati Reds. And I've got the Reds at plus 275, 31.5 is their win total. Where are you at on these guys?
So the Reds, I know that we talked about previously how we thought they were going to be a very solid team based on what their acquisitions were during the offseason. But my main concern was how this team hasn't had a winning record in a long period of time and how I didn't expect them to actually maintain that level of excellence for 162 games. Now that it's 60 games, I like this team a lot more. And I feel like the fact that this team hasn't done much recently isn't going to matter as much because there's not going to be as much pressure on them to do well for a 60-game season as opposed to 162. Like, if the Reds got hot and had a pretty good record by the All-Star break, which wouldn't have surprised me in a 162-game season, you might have started to wonder if the pressure would get to them or if they were going to fade in the second half, kind of like what you would expect them to do. With 100 less games, ballpark, I have to assume that the Reds are going to be a pretty solid team. And I think that they can get off to a hot start. I think they could actually maintain it, and I think that they actually have a good chance of winning the division. If you look at their actual roster, the rotation, Castillo's phenomenal. Sonny Gray turned back the clock last year. He was very solid as well. Trevor Bauer was a disaster, but he still has potential. He's shown upside with Cleveland in the past. I think he's still a pretty solid number 3. Desclafani is decent as a number 4, and they brought in Wade Miley, who is a pretty solid number 5, so the rotation's pretty good. The bullpen is also a little bit up in the air. Iglesias blew some saves last year, but he's still decent. Lorenzen's a pretty good pitcher. They got Pedro Strop from the Cubs, which should be a very good addition to the bullpen. Amir Garrett's okay when he's not trying to fight the entire Pittsburgh Pirates roster. A decent bullpen arm. Stevenson's okay. And if you look at the lineup, you bring in Moustakas. You bring in Shogo Akiyama from Japan, who should be a pretty solid hitter as well. You bring in Castellanos. This team's got a lot of decent pieces, or at least interesting pieces. I don't know if Votto is going to turn back the clock or if last year was just the complete, just sign this career is basically over. But at the end of the day, you look at the rest of the team, you still have Suarez, you bring in Moustakas, you bring in Castellano. That's a pretty solid group over there in the middle. I actually like this team. I think this team has the potential to win, I'd say, maybe 30-something games and win the division. It wouldn't surprise me.
No, not one bit. And I think, this is going to I think a lot of the success is going to hinge on the question that you brought up. Is Joey Votto done, or was last year just kind of an aberration?
Last year was one of the biggest falling off the cliffs I've ever seen for a borderline Hall of Famer. He was awful last year.
Just to recap, last season for Joey Votto, he hit 261 with 15 home runs and just 76 RBIs, and that was just 47 RBIs, and it's kind of the second season in a row where Votto hasn't been great at all. The season before, he hit he had 284. He hit a little better, but again, just 12 home runs and 67 RBIs. So he's really kind of fallen off for 2 seasons in a row, and you have to ask yourself, are we going back to the well once too often here with Joey Votto? Is he officially done? I think.
Well, even if he is hypothetically done, you still have Josh Van Meter, who was pretty good last year. You still have Aquino, especially with the DH now. I know Aquino didn't really do much after the first month or so. He kind of fell off a cliff. But you still have a lot of decent bench bats there who you could potentially sub in. I'm not saying the Reds are ever going to bench Joey Votto. He means to the organization. You pretty much have to play him because he's eventually going to get his number retired in the Reds Ring of Fame or whatever you want to call it. So I don't think they're going to immediately, pull him out to the back like old Yeller. But at the end of the day, I think if he plays less than he normally did, I don't think it's as big of a deal because his production has been so bad lately. I feel like Votto is more of a name brand cachet kind of guy at this point in his career. I don't think he's ever going to turn back the clock to the former MVP guy that we once saw. Reds have a decent amount of bench bats. I mean, they're pretty deep if you really talk about their lineup. I know they didn't really generate many runs last year, but you bring in so many new pieces. I think this team should be pretty good. It's just a matter of if they can actually piece it together for 60 games.
Yeah, I agree. If they can get off to a good start, I think they have a real shot. That's probably the first team that I'm going to take a look at in that division as far as their win total. 31.5 is the posted total. I'd probably lean a little bit over after leaning under with the first two. And that brings us to my pick to win this division. It is once again the Milwaukee Brewers. I think that the Brewers are certainly they've lost some players and they've made a lot of changes, but I think you've got an entire season of Christian Yelich. You've got Lorenzo Cain back. You've got Ryan Braun back. They brought in Justin Smoak to play first base. I like Avisail Garcia playing third. They've got some questions with playing on the left side of the infield at shortstop and third base. They've got Sogard and Jed Jorko to play third, and
they also got Brock Holt, I believe.
Oh, do they bring in Brock Holt from?
They got Brock as well, so he's a utility guy. He could probably fit in.
He is the quintessential utility guy. Yeah, I like. I'm a big Brock Holt fan. I like kind of the Swiss Army knife there from the Red Sox. He's and there'll be plenty of places for him because they got some questions at shortstop too with Arcia and Urias. So we'll see what happens at the bottom of the lineup. But I'll tell you what, this top of the lineup, the first six, you go Kane, Yelich, Herrera, Braun, Smoke, and Avisail Garcia. Dude, I don't think there's a top six that I like better anywhere in this division.
Well, for me, I'm not as high on the Brewers this year. I think that they're going to be decent, but at the end of the day, I'm looking at this team and I still have a lot of question marks. Most of the rotation, they ended up bringing in a decent amount of new arms after swapping some guys out. For example, Zach Davies no longer there, Chase Anderson no longer there. Woodruff I do really like as a number one. He's a very solid pitcher. He's had some injury issues, but he has been pretty solid. You still have Hauser, who's okay. You got Brett Anderson, who's decent. Eric Lauer, who they got from the Padres. I mean, the rotation's there. And they also brought in that guy from the KBO. I forgot what his name was. Ensign Bloom. I forgot what his name is.
Yeah, I can't. I know who you're talking about.
But he's still a question mark. So the bullpen, the rotation itself, not exactly. Josh Lindblom. That's who I was thinking of. But they brought him as he was the Cy Young Award winner in the KBO. So they brought him over. Don't know if that's going to translate, but he's got some trophies in his trophy room. You look at the bullpen. Hader's still great. Kniebel's been pretty hit or miss, but has the potential to be pretty good. Suter's decent. Claudio's okay. The bullpen, I'd say, is decent. I don't really have many issues with the bullpen, especially with Hader being used in high leverage situations. They got Narvaez at catcher. They ended up replacing Eric Thames with Justin Smoke, which I think is basically a wash. Other than that, though, I do like Garcia. I think he's a good addition. The rest of this lineup, though, you got Yelich, Kane, and I think that's pretty much it. Braun hasn't been the same guy that he once was, whether that's steroid-related or not. He just hasn't been the same guy that he used to be. I think he's a little bit over the hill. RC is okay at shortstop. Sogard they brought in. He's decent at third base. You have a pretty good youngster at second base. He can't field to save his life, but he's a pretty good hitter. And, I think this team's okay, but I'm not a big fan of the rotation. I'm not as high on the lineup. So I think this team is going to be pretty mediocre if I really had to judge it based solely on what I'm looking at from a roster perspective. So I'm not that high on the Brewers. I'm not that low on the Brewers. And they should finish somewhere around 500.
All right. Well, see, and I'm pretty high on the kid at second base. I like
him. It's just a matter of I'm just going through the list of people at the lineup. I really see three guys, maybe four, because I think Narvaez has some potential at catcher. But I'm not going to immediately say that the additions of Justin Smoke and Eric Sogard are suddenly going to make this team a serious contender. I just don't. The rotation has a lot of question marks for me, and I think there's too much.
You're right, and that is certainly the weak link on this team. But just remember, they were a serious contender before. They're not trying to make a leap; they're trying to maintain, which is sometimes harder. I agree with that. I think, I have a hunch that Counsell might try to do something funky here with the back end of this bullpen. I think he would like to have Kniebel in the closer role, and have Josh Hader in the true fireman role, where you can bring him in the 6th, 7th, or 8th, or the 9th if you kept it clean, and he's not on back-to-back days or whatever. But I think there's a chance that they kind of do something funky with Josh Hader in the bullpen, because Counsell's already shown. We talked about it a little bit last week. He's already shown that he has the he's not afraid to put Hader in whatever high leverage situation occurs late in the game, no matter what the inning is. I like that. That's the way they used to do it back in my day, boy. And I like that. I think that may become a trend, especially if the Brewers have some success with it.
Yeah. It's a matter of the fact that the Brewers are trying to maintain, and the fact that this division is so up in the air is not necessarily a bad thing. That just means that they're pretty consistent. But, I just don't think the ceiling for this team is that high. I think that's the main issue that I have.
All right. Well, you and I may have to have a little side bet on the Brewers here. I like them over, and I know earlier in the season I took the Reds to win the division. I think it's going to come down to the Reds and the Brewers. I might take a spin on both of those teams.
I think I pivoted from the Cubs to the Reds, especially at the current price. I don't see much value on the Cubs. This Reds team on paper is, I think, the best team in the division. So, just my 2 cents. I think the Reds on paper look really good.
All right. Well, I'll tell you a team that on paper is not the best team in the division.
I don't think we have to spend much time on this upcoming team, right?
I like this team. I don't like them as a winning team.
I like about 3 players on this team.
Josh Bell's a genuine hero. He's going to be
great. Bell's great.
And I don't hate Polanco. I think he definitely has some potential. But yeah, as far as the rest of the Pirates go, I don't love their rotation. Joe Musgrove showed some flashes last year. I think he's a quality pitcher. I'm not sure.
Joe Musgrove, number 1 starter.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I'm not sure he's a number 1. Then you've got Trevor Williams, Mitch Keller, Derek Holland, who, by the way, does the best Harry Carey impression of all time, and Stephen Brault as the 5th starter.
Well, for Harry Carey impressions, I always lean more to Will Ferrell. But
Will Ferrell did his own thing.
He really went overboard. But it is.
Hey, if you were a hot dog, would you eat yourself?
Yeah.
My writing partner used to do the best Will Ferrell doing Harry Carey of all time. It cracked me up to no end. He would just come into the office and go, hey. Anyway, it doesn't help that the Pirates probably have their 2 best starters that are going to be missing this season with surgery. Jamison Tyon had TJ and Chris Archer, who
that's a disastrous trade that they don't want to talk about.
That poor guy. He had the neurogenic thoracic outlet syndrome surgery, which is the where they basically get it's kind of like a dry socket basically in your shoulder. It's where it doesn't. I know other guys have had this. I'm trying to think of some of the guys that have had this surgery. It's a tough deal, and maybe if that's been the problem with Archer since the trade, maybe they'll have him something serviceable in 2021. I don't know. Personally, I think he's done, but you never know. Guys can be fixed by fixing a nagging injury, something like that. But yeah, I don't. I guess really the only question is if you think there's any value in the win total for the Pirates. They're obviously 50-1 to win the division. So you want to play that. God bless you. I would highly recommend you just send your money to Scott and I, and we can provide that address before the season starts. Just to send us your $10 or $20 you want to throw on the Pirates.
We would diversify your cash a little bit better than just putting it on the Pirates, right?
Absolutely. We'd spread it around, make maybe a couple better investments. And the 25.5 as far as the win total goes. Scott, any value there in playing one side or the other of the wins?
For me, if I had to win anywhere, it'd be the under. This team can't pitch. If you just want to break it down, their rotation's terrible. Their bullpen's terrible. The only players I actually like on this team are Newman, Bell, Reynolds, and I think Adam Frazier is decent. But for the most part, that's pretty much it. I don't really like anybody else on their team. And Frazier's even just pretty mediocre. But yeah, this team's just not going to win games. They're just not good.
I'm just looking at this real quick. You've got 665 and 62. You got 127. So you got 152.5. So the projected win totals for these teams is 152.5. And that's pretty strong when you figure that what are they going to be playing? 300 games, right?
Something like that.
So the losses have to come somewhere. They have a bad feeling they're going to come from the Buccos. Not going to be raising the Jolly Roger too much there, and in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I'm going to have to there's just too many good teams. Although there are a couple bad teams in the other Central Division that they're going to play 8 games against. We'll talk about those here in a minute.
Once again, it goes back to I don't know how many games are going to be favored. It's just a matter of this team's just not going to be favored in many games.
No, certainly not within their division where they're playing 40 of their 60 games. I agree with you there. I doubt they would be favored in many matchups at all. I just don't see it. I think they've got to. Now let's see. They've got 60. They've got 40 and 20. So if you split, yeah, I don't see it.
But they're not. Yeah, they might actually be favored around what, like 10 games this year, a little bit less.
Maybe 10.
Yeah,
I don't think that many. I don't see a way for them to get 25 and a half. I'll take in the under there.
I would lean the under as well.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about the American League Central here a little bit. This is my home division. We talked about your home division there a couple days ago. You're a Yankees fan. I've had a little less storied tradition with my team, which is the Kansas City Royals. Although
we have a more recent World Series.
Although we have won a more recent World Series than those New York Yankees. So something I will remind you of, just about every time we talk about baseball. But
I just reminded you of it, so it's fine.
Well, I was going to bring it up here.
I know. I preemptively beat you to it because I knew you were going to talk about it, so it's fine.
The Twins are one of those rare teams that have a minus price on them. They are currently, I've got them at I believe minus 175. Let me double check. I got them minus 165. What do you have for the Twins?
I see minus 130, which
wow.
I actually am a pretty big fan of, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like this team. Just about from top to bottom. They've got a fantastic top seven, and they run in Mitch Garver to catch, and Luis Arraez to play second base. I don't know much about those two guys, but I do know about the first six, and then they have Byron Buxton playing center field, hitting ninth, which I think is going to be one of your better 9 hitters in all of Major League Baseball.
If he can stay healthy, but he's a very solid player. I mean, there's no way around it. He's a
absolutely. Max Kepler, probably the best player nobody's heard of. I love me some Max Kepler. They've got Nelson Cruz DHing again. Josh Donaldson playing third. Rosario, Miguel Sano. They've got some boppers here, man. Obviously, as they set the Major League record for home runs last year, they have some people that can hit the ball out of the park.
And they got Donaldson.
And they've got Josh Donaldson as well. Very, very well done. I like this rotation. Jose Barrios is the real deal. Jake Odorizzi is a solid number 2. Rich Hill. Then they've brought in Kenta Maeda from the Dodgers, and they brought Homer Bailey over from the Royals, and most recently the A's, as he was a late season acquisition for the Oakland A's. They've got Taylor Rogers as their closer, and they've got Miguel Pineda, who's still got to serve 39 games of his suspension.
Former Yankee Michael Pineda.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll see. He didn't. There's somebody that didn't thrive after the trade, huh?
Yeah, he went from pine tar to PEDs.
Yeah, he's certainly. He tested positive for a diuretic.
Yep.
The Twins. They've also got they brought in Julio Chacin, and they could do something funky here with the 6-man rotation. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. There's just really nothing that I don't like about this Minnesota Twins team.
By the way,
yes?
Sorry, quick interruption. We already went through the NL Central.
Yes.
Apparently, Jose Quintana from the Cubs hurt his hand washing dishes today, and is having surgery. So he might be out for the couple of months in the season.
Obviously his pitching hand, or we probably wouldn't be reporting about it.
I'd assume as much, but it was reported about an hour ago. I know I'm a little bit late here, but he went on microscopic surgery on his left thumb. So they don't know how long he's going to be out for. So sorry to bring that up at awful timing, but whatever. I figured it was worth mentioning.
Time to fade that 32.5. No question about it.
Yep. Anyway, back to the Twins.
I love them. I love them. 34.5 is their win total. And
I would take the over there.
Yep, you got them at minus 130 to win. I think they are going to feast on the bottom feeders in this division. They've got 30 games against the White Sox, the Royals, and the Tigers. I would not be surprised if they get 22 wins out of those 30.
I was going to say 24, but yeah, I think that's right. That sounds like worst case scenario, honestly. Thing about the Twins, I'm not even really going to talk about them that much. There's really not much else to say. Anytime you have two teams in your division that are roughly 100-1 to win your division, you got some free wins in there.
Yep.
And the Twins, they can score runs in a variety of ways, mostly the long ball. This team is just deep from top to bottom. I think Garver's a phenomenal catcher. I think they have a lot of great pieces here offensively. Even like Eddie Rosario, they have a couple of guys who are also sleeper bats who have the ability to generate a lot of runs. Marwin Gonzalez, etc. The rotation, Berrios is pretty good. Odorizzi had a pretty good year. They got Maeda, who's decent. Rich Hill is okay. I think he's a little bit up there in years now, but he's still a decent back-end starter. And I got no comments on Homer Bailey, but, the bullpen's decent as well. Rogers is a decent closer. Romo has experience. Tyler Clippard, I've never been the biggest fan of, but he's been around for a long time. He's got experience. Duffy's okay. May's okay. The pitching staff, I'd say, is probably the Achilles heel, but it's still good enough. And I think that this team could easily score, 5 runs a game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, easy.
So for me, I would have to lean to the over as well. And minus 130 looks like a treat. I mean, this team is clearly the best team in the division.
Yeah, and the second favorite there is the Cleveland Indians at 32.5 is their win total. Odds to win the division are I got them at plus 275. You probably have a little better price on them there.
What was the number you said?
275.
And that's for the Indians?
Yeah.
I see plus 265. So you
Okay.
have a better line there.
All right. Well, this is a team that's going to live and die by their rotation. They still have a great rotation, as with Shane Bieber at the top, Mike Clevenger, Carlos Carrasco, Plutko, and Zach Plesac, Brad Hand, a decent closer, and you've got arguably one of the best managers in the game, in Tito Martinez. Although he's going to be limited a little bit with the new rule about the minimum amount of batters being faced, not going to quite be able to grind it out as much as he has in the past. We're getting ideal matchups. But this is a team that's only going to go as far as their pitching staff is going to take them. They've got Francisco Lindor, a fantastic player. They've got Carlos Santana, Franmil Reyes, third base, and Jose Ramirez at third. Reyes playing left field rather. But other than that, I think there's too many holes in this team. I think there's too many weak spots on this Indian squad for them to compete with the Twins to win the division.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up. I think this Indians team is decent. I think that this team is definitely worse than the Twins, so I'm not that high on them. But, for example, if this team was in the NL Central, so to speak, he might actually pick them to win the division. So
they'd be right in the mix.
That's what I'm saying. So it really depends on the division. I think they're the second best team in the AL Central, but I just think the Twins are just so far ahead of everybody else. I don't think it's really close.
Well, yeah, that was going to be my next question, because you've got a team with a lot of heat that's been off-season heat that's been generated to make that next step, and that is the White Sox. So they've also listed as plus 275, although their win total is one game below that of Cleveland. 31.5 is their win total. Is it the White Sox time, Scott? We talked a little bit about Tim Anderson and the fact that he is just a fantastic pure hitter. They've got some boppers. They've got Jose Abreu still, of course. Juan Moncada playing third. Edward Encarnacion is going to be their DH. But I just don't know about this pitching staff. I know last year was a big breakthrough year for Luis Giolito. I'm just not convinced that he is going to be that he really is that guy. And this is probably, I'm going to admit it. It comes from a bias of many, many years watching Luis Giolito be a terrible pitcher. He really, up until last year, he really only dominated one team, and that team is the Kansas City Royals. Other than that, he was absolutely dreadful. He had bad numbers his rest of his career, and he had horrible numbers against the rest of the league other than the Royals. So, and then, of course, they've got Keuchel, Ronaldo, Lopez, Dylan Cease and Gio Gonzalez is still kicking around. This is a team I see. I see the intrigue with the White Sox. I see how people look at this team on paper and say, you know what, this could be their year.
The truth is that I look at this team and I see the building blocks for a decent team within about 2 years or so, but I just don't think it's going to happen this year. I see a lot of good young talent on this team. If you want to talk about Luis Robert at center field, and you want to talk about Nick Madrigal at second base, they have a couple of really talented youngsters in their farm system who should make a serious impact in the future. But I really just think this rotation's not great either, or the bullpen as well. I like Giolito a little bit more than you. Keuchel, I don't think he's the same pitcher he used to be, but he's still pretty solid. Not a fan of Cease, not a fan of Lopez. Don't know what to think of Gio Gonzalez at this stage of his career. Not really sold on them. For the bullpen, I like Cishek. I like Bummer. Other than that, though, I am really not a fan of Alex Colomé at all as a closer. I don't think he's that talented. I don't think he's that good. But if you want to talk about the actual lineup, you bring in Grandal, pretty solid addition there. You bring in Encarnacion. You bring in Mazzara. Mazzara's never been a big average guy, but he's got a huge amount of power. I think this team's okay, but at the end of the day, I think this team's 1 or 2 years away. I think they need Madrigal and Robert to develop. They need to bring in a pitcher. Maybe Kopech can come back at some point in the year and provide some stability. But even if he does, he doesn't have many reps on him at this point in time. I think in 2 years or so, he might look like a very solid starter. But I'm not going to immediately jump the gun and say this is the year for the White Sox. I think they know that they can play the long game with these guys.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring that up with Kopech coming off of Tommy John surgery. He has a surgery in September of 2018.
A lot of talent.
Yeah, so he should be he's somebody that's benefited a lot by the late start of the season. The same is true for Carlos Rodon. He had Tommy John surgery last May. So it is possible that those guys come up and are able to contribute. Although, as you and I know, you generally need a year of recovery after TJ, and then you usually need another season to get back to where you're a productive pitcher. I'm just not sure that guys coming off of injury are going to be extremely helpful in a short season situation there. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Nick Madrigal is going to be a star. I think this kid's going to be a good player. I'm not sure he's quite there yet, but certainly somebody to watch in the future. So, well, you know what? We got to talk about him.
I don't know how thoroughly you want to break these two teams down. I'll let you kind of take the lead on the next team we're going to talk about, but I feel like they're pretty self-explanatory, if I'm just being straightforward.
You know what? I'll tell you what. I will say something about this Kansas City Royals team. I like the top part of their lineup. If you look at the hitters, if you just look at the hitters, they have the talent to be competitive. All right, they've got Whit Merrifield, who's led the league in hits. They've got Alberto Mondesi playing shortstop, a kid that's got fantastic speed. He's got some pop, good hitter. He's only going to get better. Hunter Dozier playing right field, which is going to be an adventure after him playing third base and first base. But again, a kid with some pop that can hit 260, 270. Jorge Soler, who finally gave the Royals a legitimate home run record last year as he hit 40.
I always thought he was overrated, and then he had this blowout year. I know the Cubs kept hyping him up for many years, and I just never saw it. But yeah, he pieced together a good season.
I was one of the lone voices in Kansas City who actually liked this Soler for Davis trade. I thought
it worked out pretty well.
It did, and you knew you were finally cashing out when somebody was at their peak. You're finally, which is kind of isn't the Royals. They usually let a player peak and then try to trade him 2 or 3 years after that. So I liked him getting good value for Wade Davis. Because the last thing a team needs that's rebuilding is a closer. So I thought Soler was a good young piece. It did take him a couple years to find his way. Then you do have Salvador Perez coming back behind the plate. Alex Gordon, the venerable veteran, is going to be hitting sixth. They got Maikel Franco playing third base.
I've never been a Franco guy.
Yeah, I know you haven't, and we'll see. He fits the profile of a lot of players the Royals sign, where you guys a guy that's average with a a little bit of teasing talent where you go, well, this guy could be good, and he comes over to the Royals and his career dies. So he certainly fits into that.
Can we just address the elephant in the room with this team?
The pitching staff?
Yeah,
they're awful. They're dreadful. They're beyond dreadful. They've got Brad Keller listed as their number one, and all you need to know about Brad Keller is
it's either him or Duffy, but yeah.
He ended up being the number one starter last year when he was a Rule 5 guy.
Yeah.
So that tells you all you need to know about the Royals pitching staff. Danny Duffy is listed as the number 2 starter. Jacob Junis, is a pitcher with some talent. He's got a nice breaking ball, but he's just he lacks consistency. And then the Mike Montgomery experiment continues, trying to turn him back into a starter. And then Brady Singer, which is actually the pitcher I want to see the most, as the Royals have a number of quality arms in the minor leagues, and the pipeline it should be opening here in the next couple of seasons. This may be a team to be reckoned with. Probably 2 years from now, probably not before 2022. But I am anxious to see Brady Singer, as he is the most highly developed player of the bunch. So. Ian Kennedy has done a nice job transitioning from a slightly below average starter to a slightly above average closer. But the rest of the bullpen, as you might expect when you're starting those 5 guys, the rest of the bullpen is dreadful. So this is a team that's going to need to score 6 or 7 runs a game to win, and they're not going to do that. So yeah, I like them. They may play some entertaining baseball this year. They may show a glimpse of the future with some of their young arms, but they're going to be nowhere near contending, I wouldn't think. 23.5 is their win total. There's no easy wins for this team. I would have to play the under on the win total for the Kansas City Royals. But now the good news is for the Royals,
they're not the Tigers.
They're not the worst team in the division, and that is, of course, the Detroit Tigers. Tigers plus 300 to win.
Should be plus 3,000.
Actually, 300 to 1 plus 30,000, right?
No, I'm saying they should be 3,000 to 1.
Yeah, you could put really any number on that, and it would be about the same price.
Put it at 1,000,000 to 1. It's not going to change anything.
No, it's not. 21.5 is their win total. Scott, anything at all you like about the Tigers?
No.
Okay.
Simply put, I think this team is a disaster. I think Matt Boyd is decent. I think Fulmer, off of surgery, is a question mark, but he's a potential trade piece for this team. Yeah, that's
ugly.
That's pretty much it, if I'm being honest. If you just go through this whole team, I know that we were kind of being harsh on some teams, like the Pirates, are talking about how I only like about 3 to 4 guys on the actual team.
Right.
I might only actually like about 3 people on this team, and one of them's coming off a serious injury. You have Fulmer, who I always thought was decent.
Yeah.
You have Matt Boyd, who I actually like.
Good pitcher. Good wipeout slider. Best left-handed slider in baseball.
Besides Chris Sale, but yes. And Chris Sale is not exactly relevant for this season, so you had a taste there. But I also like Austin Romine, because I'm a Yankees fan, and I always liked Romine as a catcher. But for the most part, that's it. I don't really like anybody else on this team. I like Miguel Cabrera from a historic perspective,
sure,
but not exactly from his current contract perspective. Yeah. I think the Royals have more optimism just looking at the actual roster. Like, the Royals have some pieces here. Soler, Dozier, Merrifield's good. I like Mondesi. You have some bright side pieces. Ian Kennedy's a pretty good closer. I think Tolares, you have Trevor Rosenthal in your bullpen, which I think is one of the funniest things of all time. I don't know how he's still on a roster. Yeah, the Tigers are terrible. This team, I actually think, will be the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
And I think this team could actually win about, I'd say, 16 games. I think they actually could go like 16-44, and I would not be surprised.
16-44, which, let's see, that would put them at would that be a win percentage of, 20 wins is going to be 333, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I could see this team actually winning about 15, 16 games. I think they're actually that bad.
Yeah, 15 would be 250.
Yeah, I think they're that bad. And that means a lot because they have to play against the Royals, and they're playing against the NL Central as well. So they play against the Pirates 4 times. This team might actually be underdogs in every game that they play. I know I keep saying that. It sounds like a broken record. But besides games that Boyd starts against maybe the Royals, where are they going to be favored? This team is awful.
Yeah, and they've kind of hit that zone that a lot of bad teams hit, where they've got some unproven youngsters mixed in with a bunch of over-the-hill veterans.
They're going to embrace the tank and bring in a bunch of young guys to get a lot of playing time. Not to mention the fact that they're probably going to trade off Boyd or even Fulmer at the trade deadline.
Hey, that becomes the question of, do you get rid of these guys?
Yeah, you dump them.
But they brought in C.J. Crone, they brought in Jonathan Scope. Guys they're certainly on the backside of their career. I don't know what this team's doing. I don't understand it. I don't get what the plan is. They like you said, they need to blow it all up, and they haven't quite embraced that yet. Well, and part of that is Miguel Cabrera and his onerous contract. We've talked about this in the past. It's maybe one of the worst contracts as far as value goes in the history of baseball.
I still give the Pujols contract a little bit of an edge there. I mean, the Chris Davis contract is the peak of all-time bad contracts. I think that's by far the Mount Rushmore of bad contracts in baseball. You have to mention the Chris Davis contract. I mean, that's just
okay. So what did they sign him to?
Who, Chris Davis?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I want to know the answer to that.
No, you're talking about the Orioles, Chris Davis.
The Orioles, Chris Davis.
Yeah.
Because contract there. You mentioned the Pujols contract. I know that this person had a lot of personal issues. You got to mention the Josh Hamilton contract for the Angels as well. There's been a lot of bad contracts lately.
Well, before you start down that road, I just want you to know that they owe Miguel Cabrera $30 million this year, $30 million next year, $32 million in 2022, and $32 million in 2023.
It's not great, and you definitely can't.
No, that's $120 million in sunk costs.
I'm just gonna say, if you want to roast Miguel Cabrera in comparison to these other contracts, at least he batted .282. Could be worse. You have Chris Davis, who's batting roughly $140, and you're paying him $20+ million a year. There are worse contracts out there.
No, there aren't. I
think there are. I'm not gonna defend Cabrera's contract, but I think the Davis contract's worse. I think the Pujols contract might be worse. It's definitely bottom 5, but I think if you want to go down a rabbit hole of contracts, you can find worse ones.
All right, I'm gonna look here. I'm gonna compare them. I've got Davis's contract coming up here. So they signed him 7 years, $161 million. And
what year are they on? They're on like year 4.
I'm looking. They've got him $17 million for the next 3 years.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, but you have to factor in how awful he's been during the course of that contract. Cabrera at the start of the contract was one of the best hitters in baseball.
Right. Yeah, they signed him 7 years, $17 million every season.
I don't know if he won the Triple Crown before that contract or after. So I think it was before. I'm pretty sure it was maybe a year or two before he got the massive contract. But Cabrera was still an all-star, and he was still a very solid player for a couple of years. You look at the Pujols deal. Did he ever make an all-star team on the Angels? Because I'm pretty sure he didn't. I think he's just been underwhelming on the Angels ever since he got there.
That's a good question. Although, he's been productive. He hasn't been worth the incredible amount of money they paid him. I would certainly.
He's been productive from home runs. He just doesn't get on base. Well, his batting average completely plummeted.
Here's the deal, though. You sign contracts like that with guys of that age, you know that your value is going to be front loaded.
You also have the Robinson Cano contract from the Mariners and the Mets.
Yeah, you know you're going to be overpaying on the back end. So the question then becomes: are they going to be worth it enough on the front side to justify their contract? And
honorable mention for this is Chris Sale, by the way. They won a World Series, so I guess it might have paid for itself. But he's having Tommy John now. That's not a great situation.
Well, Verlander had a very similar contract for the Tigers.
That looked like a disaster, and then
It looked like they were going to be absolutely stuck with both of these guys, paying these guys, I don't know, about 60 to 65 million a year, and they were both dreadful. Now Verlander was
right.
able to
Speaking of bad contracts, sorry to interrupt. Shout out to Jordan Zimmerman.
Yeah, I mean, it's we could do an entire show on terrible contracts.
Jacoby Ellsbury, one of the worst contracts I've ever seen with the Yankees.
Yeah, I just don't see anything worse than giving Miguel Cabrera $120 million.
Yeah, we kind of just went full circle here. I do like Cameron Maven. I think he's decent. But at the end of the day, let's just say the Yankees, the Cubs, I'm trying to think of a contending team that needs pitching.
Every one of them?
The Phillies, any of these teams, they call you up when you're already 30 games under. Hey, you want to give us Matt Boyd for some prospects? You think the Tigers are going to say no? No, they're going to dump him.
Yeah, you have to look at these guys. You have to look at whether Matt Boyd will still be around when the youngsters for the Tigers when they mature and they come to fruition. And my guess is no. So I think
you have to wonder if this team is going to be as awful as we think they are. This team could easily start out, I don't know, 10-30, 5-20. They might just look through after 1 month and just go, well, we got no shot of making the playoffs. Time to pull the plug. And they just might start chipping off some pieces for prospects, which I think is what they should do, because the team's not going to be competitive for arguably the next 4 or 5 years. I mean, this team's terrible. There's no way around it. You're not going to. You're not going to check free. You think you're going to check free agents to Detroit?
Yeah, I don't know what their pipeline looks like as far as the minors go, but it's based on the current talent and what I've seen coming up. It ain't going to be next year.
Correct. So I think you have no choice but to pretty much dump it. And I think that if you do that, you're going to trade Boyd, you're going to trade Fulmer. You might even trade some outfielders with some value. Maybe you can flip Maben, but I doubt it because he signed a 1-year deal. You can maybe ship Crone or Scope. Maybe. I could see Jacoby Jones getting traded or Victor Reyes getting traded. Maybe Goodrum. I actually like Goodrum. I think he's decent. But I think you could easily trade him. I think pretty much every piece on the Tigers is expendable, which means that this team should be a disaster because they could easily just trade players when their team gets bad and pick up a bunch of double-A pitching prospects.
Is there a worse sports town than Detroit right now? Got the Red Wings are terrible. You got
Well, the Red Wings got screwed, though, because they didn't even win the lottery. They got the 4th pick in the draft. So, yeah, they got absolutely screwed. The Lions are terrible. The Pistons are terrible. The only thing you got is the University of Michigan, and that's Ann Arbor.
Right.
So you don't really have much.
No, that isn't.
You got Michigan State, which isn't even as great anymore, and they're in East Lansing. So, no, you don't really have much in Detroit.
No, that's
even Detroit Mercy's the worst team in their respective conference in basketball.
Yes, they are.
I think you're probably right on that one.
You turn into a big Ferris State fan. That's the other team that's up there in Detroit. So
it's really all you got at that point.
So you're solidly in the under 21.5, I would assume, for these Tigers.
Yeah, they're projected to win about 20. I can easily see 15, so I got to go under.
Yeah, I think 20 and 40 is the.
That sounds optimistic, if I'm being honest.
You know, and you look at, well, they're going to play 333 baseball. How bad are they? Well, they're bad. They're awful. If you haven't got a chance to see these Tigers, they're a terrible team. So I'm going to take the under on the Tigers. So let's recap here real quick and go through these, and I'll go through mine, then you go through yours. NL Central, I like the Brewers at plus 275, and as far as win totals go, Cardinals and Cubs under 32.5, Reds over 31.5, Brewers over 30.5, Pirates under 25.5. In this Central, I think the oddsmakers have it right there. I like the Twins at minus 130. I think they go over 34.5. I think the Indians go under 32.5. White Sox go under 31.5. That's gonna be close. Royals go over 23.5, and the Tigers go under 21.5. Scott, your recap.
So my order for the NL Central, I got the Reds in first. I'm gonna go with let me just look at these win totals for a second, because I know that they play every game pretty much in divisions. I'm trying to make sure I don't say something that literally is impossible.
32.5 for Cubs and Cardinals, 31.5 Reds, 30.5 Brewers, 25.5 Pirates. favorites.
Yeah, I'd go over on the Reds first place. I'm going to take the Cardinals in second. I don't really like the Cardinals, but I think that they're consistent. They are what they are. I don't think they're going to massively implode. So I kind of like the consistency from them. I got them in second place. Slight lean to the over, but no play on that. Third, I'll take the Cubs third. I'll take the Brewers fourth, and I'll take the Pirates fifth.
Okay.
That's my thoughts on the division. The NL Central is really a toss-up, but I like the Reds in first just for value. And everything else, you can pretty much just put whatever you want, besides the Pirates finishing any place but last. I feel like you can kind of make an argument there. And for the AL Central, I like the Twins in the over. I like the Indians in second in the under. Other than that, I like the White Sox. What's coming in third? What's their win total for the White Sox?
31.5.
I like the under. The Royals, what's their win total?
23.5.
I'm actually going to the over on the Royals, and I'm going to take the under on the Tigers, and I think they're going to come in last. But I think that win total for the Royals, this team can't pitch, but you have to question how well any of these teams are going to pitch with the very questionable offseason with everything like that. I think I think Ian Kennedy's a decent closer. I think he could shut it down late. This team should score runs. I mean, this team offensively is not awful. I think this team could win 25 games, 26 games.
Yeah, I think 25 and 35 would be considered a pretty.
I don't think that's that bad. And I think the Tigers are going to be terrible. So, yeah.
There you go.
Like the Royals play the Tigers, I think the Royals could win 7 of those games.
Yes. Easy.
Yeah. So, for me, that's my breakdown.
All right, cool. Well, there we go, guys. That is the
do we agree on the order for the AL Central? Where's it going? Twins, Indians, White Sox, Royals, Tigers?
Yep, I think it books out right. The only possible flip there, I think, is going to be the White Sox and the Indians.
Yeah, I just think the White Sox are 1 or 2 years away.
Still. Agreed. I think the odds makers have it right. I think they have it completely wrong in the NL.
Yeah, plus the Indians, even though they were underwhelming last year, I have to assume the start of last year for Jose Ramirez was a complete fluke. Right. He completely woke up in the second half and he was normal again. So I expect him to play well. The Indians have the best rotation in the division. Brad Hand, I've never been a big fan of, but he's probably the best closer in the division. This pitching staff's not bad for the Indians, so I think they should come in second.
Yeah, it's going to be all about the pitching for the Indians, and the pitching should have the upper hand, if you will, early in the season. I think the Indians may make some hay early and then fade down the stretch, but I think they put up enough wins to ensure themselves second place, maybe a wild card. We'll see.
Yep, maybe.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. That is our look at Major League Baseball's Central Division here today. And it's been fun. We're going to do the West tomorrow as we take a look at the trash can banging Houston Astros and their friends there in the AL West. And of course, we're going to talk about, can anybody beat the Dodgers in the NL West? Spoiler alert: I don't think they can. So we'll see if any of us have a hot take on this being the rise of the Diamondbacks, but I don't really think we're going to see that. So we'll talk about all that tomorrow. Scott, any final thoughts here on the Central Division?
No. Was looking forward to breaking down these two divisions for different reasons. We roasted the Tigers as much as I wanted to, and overall, I feel like it's we just got to talk about how good the Twins are for about 10 minutes, and that pretty much sums it up.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you joining us today, as with every day. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. Everyone should stay safe, stay healthy. Don't forget to stop by winnersandwhiners.com. Check out all the great content there, all the sports going on, all the sports that are going to be coming really soon. We've got the NBA going to be starting up. We've got baseball going to be firing up here in a little while. So make sure you check back for all the great content, winnersandwhiners.com, our sister site over there at statsalt.com as well. For all of us at Winners and Whiners, I am Scott Steen. He is Scott Reichel. Once again, thanks for joining us. Couldn't do it without you. Don't forget to drop us a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you're thinking about the upcoming baseball season. And, we'll be happy to talk about that as well. All right, you guys take care. Have a great day. Hey, we'll see you tomorrow, man. It's going to be TGIF, so everybody get ready. We've almost made it through one more week, so hang in there, kids. You guys are doing great, all right? Everyone have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.